Hello, I'm Guy, and this is Guy Robot. Hello, and welcome to the final part of my CCTV monitoring software video. We've been looking at how to create your own custom CCTV security camera monitoring application in C# for the last couple of videos I've done. We've almost finished it. This is the final touching parts we're going to do. So if you missed the first two, don't forget to watch them now for this to make any sense. And in this video, we're going to sort out the final bits of control, managing whether it goes full screen or windowed mode for each feed, dealing with displaying errors, and we're also going to manage retry video feeds if they fail. So let's get started. The next thing we need to get working is get window size toggling working. In our control window, when we click it, we're going to find where we've got our message box that says I was clicked, and remove that. And instead, what we're going to do is get into a lot of ickiness. We try and map a control we clicked to a camera number and then figure out a whole bunch of other stuff we're going to do. So what we have to do is determine which camera was clicked. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop around all of the different labels that we've got, see which one of them matches sender, and call that our camera number. There are more graceful ways to do this. Again, so found index is -1. We're definitely not going to find something at -1. And for it, I is 0, I is less than, underscore name labels dot length, I plus plus. If underscore name labels brackets I is equal to the sender, then found index is I and break. If found index is less than 0, then return. So what does this do? It goes to our name labels array, which we created up here with all of our name labels, and it looks for each of them in turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, goes, is this the one that's been clicked? So first of all, it looks at the first one, it goes, is 1 the one that's been clicked? If so, we found our label at position 0, which means we know where it is. Then if it doesn't find it, somehow this event's triggered from elsewhere, should never happen, always have error checked, just return straight away. At this point we know what's been clicked, so then we need to see, have we got an error? Because we haven't set error states yet, but I did say earlier on we don't want to do anything in an error state, so check for error, I'm going to allow this. So the error text will be underscore error labels brackets wherever we found it, because they'll have the same camera number index, dot text. If string dot is null or empty, error text. If the error text isn't empty, in other words, if there is error text and we don't want to allow it, we return straight away, just ignore the fact it's been clicked. So then if we get to this point, we know which camera we've clicked on, and it's valid, so let's toggle its size. And that can be toggling its size from big to small or small to big. So we're going to create a couple of methods here, which we haven't got at the moment, but we're going to create them. I'm going to call them here now. So we're going to call toggle size found index plus I, and we're going to call underscore video stream window dot toggle size found index. Sorry, not plus I, plus 1. So if we find this at index 0, it's camera 1. So we're going to call a method we haven't written yet called toggle size camera 1, and we're going to call it on both this window and the other one. So we'll put this out here, and we will create a private void toggle size in camera number. Actually, I'm just going to copy paste the whole of this chunk in and explain it to you instead of typing it all out again. So we've got this method, and the first thing we need to do is get a handle to the name label that we're going to work with. I'm going to rename it from text block to name label, just so it's clear. We've got some red squiggly underline here, so we're going to control dot again, and that's using called link, which is just another way we can quickly get through arrays using a much nicer structure. I'm not going to go into a whole talk about how link works here. But in essence, what we're doing here is the first thing we need to know is we've got a handle to our label. What we do here is now need to know which row and column the actual camera feed sits in. And we do that by taking the number of the camera, 1, 2, 3, 4, taking away 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and dividing it by 2. Now, because it's integer maths, that means we've got 0, 0, 1, 1, and if we add another row, it'd be 2, 2, 3, 3. That means we know which row it's meant to be on straight away. If it was a double maths, then we would get 0 and 0.5, 1 and 1.5, and it would round up. But thankfully, integer, we just truncate. And we do the same basis with camera, apart from this time, instead of dividing it by 2, we check whether it's an even number. So this percentage is called modulus, and that goes divide by 2 and give me the remainder. If the remainder is, okay, so we're copying things here. So the percentage 2 is get me the remainder from a division. So 2 percentage 2, there's a remainder of 0. 1 percentage 2, there is a remainder of 1. So what we care about is whether it's odd or even. And then what we do at this point is have something called the ternary operator. Now the ternary operator, just for explanation, if I do something simple, if I do bool is good equals true, string message to show, and I can go if is good, then message to show is yay, else message to show equals boo. Now, that's all well and good, and that's fairly readable, but I like compact code, and you've got something called the ternary operator. So you can go string message to show equals is good, question mark, yay, colon, boo. And that's basically a bit like Excel's if statement. It goes, this thing, question mark, condition if true, otherwise condition if false. The only thing here is that these things both need to be of the same type, but really good, nice, handy way to set things together without going into a whole if statement. Now, all this does is tell us that if it's an even camera number, then we're in the first column, which is actually the second one, index 1. Otherwise, we're in column 0. So all those two lines do is go, based on camera 1, 2, 3, or 4, tell me whether it should be in row 0 or 1 and column 0 or 1. And once we've got that, we know what our labels are. So we've got our error states and we've got our header for it. We want to keep our camera 1, camera 2 header visible where it should be. But what we want to do is then hide all of the other ones. We need to get a handle to all the other labels that are on the screen. And so we go name labels, which is all of our 4 name labels, where, so this is like doing a query in SQL, where our name label is not the one that we've already found for this camera. So if our name labels is camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and camera 4, and this is camera 2, that will return us camera 1, camera 3, and camera 4. And concatenate that with all the error labels where the error label is not this camera. So in that example, we'd get error 1, error 3, and error 4. And take all of those and put them into one big array of UI elements, which is the overall catch-all. Although that could also be text box. Doesn't really matter though. Let's call it a text box. I do like using the correct types when I can. Next thing we need to know is it already maximized full screen or not? Well, if it's on more than one row, more than one column, we know it's maximized. So we just go, is maximized equal to get row span is equal to 2. So if it's on 2 rows, we know it's maximized. And then we set the row and column and the row span and column span of our name label. Remember, we're not doing the video stream here. That happens in the video stream window. All we're doing is our overlays. And we're going, put the name label. If it's maximized, then we want to unmaximize it. So we put it in its default location with a width of 1 row and a width of 1 column. If it's not maximized, we want to maximize it, in which case put it in row 0, column 0, and make it too wide and too high. Then, for everything else, if it's maximized, we want everything else to become visible again, because it was maximized, now it's minimized, so everything should be visible. Otherwise, if we are maximizing it now, we want to hide everything else. So all this does is take our 2 labels and make them either in the top left corner spanning the whole window and hides everything else, or if it's already spanning the whole window, it moves them back where they're supposed to be and shows everything else again. Quite a bit of code to just tidy it up. This is why a view model wouldn't be great here, because there's no nature what we're doing with it, and it's a bit of an icky way to do it. And we need to do the same thing with a toggle method in our video stream window. So I'm going to do a copy paste job on this as well. go into our video stream window towards the bottom. And this does exactly the same again. So again, we've got a couple of bits we need to control the dot on here. This time, the only real difference is we've got Windows Forms host rather than text labels, which are our VLC containers, and they are the ones that we're resizing and showing and hiding. Otherwise, this code is pretty much exactly the same as we had on the other one. The difference is instead of UI elements, instead of text blocks, we're now using Windows Forms hosts. And if we go back here, the click code should now be working fine. So I'm hoping if I now run it and we go on to the second monitor, I can now click on this and we have full screen, not full screen. Everything's working as it should be. So if we close that, now the only thing we do have to do is get all of our status messages appearing. So what we want to do is have a way that the video stream window can ask the control window to show a status message. So we are going to create a new method in our control window, and we are going to make that an internal one, so we can be called from the other one, an internal void, set status message, int camera ID, string message, and all we're going to do in here is, first of all, go, if this is an error being set, and the camera in question is full screen, then we want to unmaximize it. So if suddenly we're streaming a video and an error happens, what we want to do is unmaximize it, put it back in its place, calling the code we've just run, because when we have an error status, we've already shown that we shouldn't be able to click on it. So what we do here is go, if string.is null or empty, negated message. So if there is an error supply, and grid.getRowSpan underscore name labels brackets camera ID -1 is greater than 1. Underscore name labels is our list of all our camera labels. So let's say that camera 2 has been clicked, so camera ID 2 comes in. Now that's in our name labels 0, 1, so index 1 in our name labels. So we get the name label for camera 2 at index 1. Then we check how many rows across is that. If it's more than 1, then we know it's already maximized. So if there is an error message, and if our camera is maximized, then what we want to do is just toggle size, which is the code that we just wrote for that camera. And then what we need to do is set the error text. So underscore error levels brackets camera ID -1 dot text is message. Now it should be as simple as that. Put on a nice comment, but it's not as simple as that. So welcome to multi-threaded design and user interface. So threads are a way that a computer processor can run multiple bits of code simultaneously. So each core is its own computer processor in effect. So if you've got a 4-core processor, you've actually got 4 CPUs. Clever. Now, you've also got hyper-threading on Intel ones, which tries to let you run twice as many things you have processors for by keeping it busy at all times. And a thread is one related sequence of code that happens together. So each program will have many threads generally. And the more parallel the workload, where stuff can happen at the same time, the more threads you have going on. Now, what happens in user interfaces is generally one single thread in the application is responsible for drawing everything on the user interface. Now, the reason for that is that you don't want your file loading code and your printing code and your mouse click code to all try and do something to one button at the same time. Because if the first thing goes enable the button, the second thing goes disable the button, and the third thing goes change the color of the button, then depending on which order that happens in, weird things can happen. So all user interface code gets channeled through a single thread, and it gets channeled through a queue. And if you try and call it from another thread, you'll get an error. Now, our CCTV code runs in a different thread because that's coming in for a live stream, that's happening in WinForms world. It's not in our WPF user interface thread. So what we need to do is write some code that says, if I'm not already in the WPF user interface thread, then call this chunk of code in that thread. Now there is something called the dispatcher, which is the WPF way to say call something on the user interface thread. In WinForms it's called invoke. So what we can do is go call back through dispatcher required. We go, if we don't have access to the dispatcher, which means we're not running on the WPF UI thread, then we need to call back through the dispatcher. So, lots of ways to do this. Again, this is a bit of an icky way. So what we're going to do is, so this creates a delegate called action. So if I do act brackets now, all that will do is call set status message with, whoopsie daisy, with the camera ID message. So that just wraps up the call to this method in a variable. And then what we can do is we can do dispatcher.invoke act, and we can pass that variable to the dispatcher. So that then will say, here is a request to call this method with these parameters, give that to the dispatcher and run it now. And that means that what will happen here is we'll come in here, we'll go, we haven't got access to the dispatcher, so wrap up a request to call this method again, but this time call it on the dispatcher. Then the dispatcher will come in, it will hit here, it'll go, I do have access, then it will run that code, it will finish, it will bubble back out, come out here, return, and go back to VLC land. Welcome to UI development. It's all alright as long as everything's on the UI thread, but then things are slow. So, either way, now we have a way to set a status message. So, the last thing we really need to do at this point is actually start using this. So, if we now go into our video stream window, we created all of these different methods earlier on. And what we actually want to do here is start displaying stuff. So when it stopped, set a status message saying stop. When it plays, before we change the media, display the status message. And when we are opening it, again, display the status message. And when we're playing it, what we want to do is clear the status message, because that means there's no error. So we just pass null into it. Now, the thing we've got here, you'll notice, so each control can have something called a tag. So in a whole bunch of places, we've obviously stored stuff in arrays. Another way to do this is each control can have a tag, and you can access it that way. So I thought I'd show both ways. So when we created the VLC controls, actually in here, we've also, as well as the VLC folder, we gave it a tag with a number, which was 1, 2, 3, or 4. And that means that when we're in here, we can directly get that tag, cast it back to a number, and call that on set status message. So when the stream stops, call the control window with set status message 1, 2, 3, or 4, and stopped. Now, if we run this, and we change back to monitor, this time you'll see our opening message appears, and now, our code works. We can no longer click on it. That's excellent. Right. The only thing that isn't there at the moment is when that stream fails, being able to retry it, which is in the final code. So if we wait for this error to happen, now you might notice there's a bit of a jump cut there back to the code. That's because I forgot to copy paste of putting the error loading stream message in. Whoops. Right. Let's try that again. So this time, if we wait for the error to happen, you will notice error loading stream appears. Excellent. So that means we're now getting an error message, but it's not retrying to load this stream, which is what we wanted. So if we go back to the code, the very last thing we need to do is have a way to retry on fail. Now there's lots of ways we can do this, but without getting too dirty and without getting too time consuming, first thing we're going to do is create 4 true false values, one per camera, that says, has an error occurred, yes or no. So in our declaration section, we're going to create an array of booleans that says, is the stream currently failed, yes or no. We're also going to create a timer. Now a timer, when we press Control dot on this, you'll notice there are 3 versions of it. System.threading, system.timers, and system.windows.form. We want system.timers on this one. Different ones, different purposes. That's the particular timer that we want. And finally, what we need to do is, again, we're going to have a threading issue here. So what if two streams fail at the same time, or the updating timer happens at the same time as a failure? Which one of them is going to set the state to whether something is good or bad? To do that, we're going to need to cope with some thread synchronization. So we're going to do this in the easiest way possible. We're just going to create an object called the stream reinitialization locker. And this is just an object that does nothing. It's just a thing. It's like a key. And only one thread's going to have this key at a time to run the ability to change whether or not there's a failure state. We've got all that. The first thing we need to do is set up this timer. So in our constructor, what we are going to do is create our retry timer. And we're going to go stream retry timer. It is a new timer. And in our new timer, we're going to give it the property for interval. It's timespan, 1 second, 15 total milliseconds, because it takes milliseconds for this one, so 15,000. Could hard code it, that just looks nicer. And then we're going to tell it auto reset equals false. Now, auto reset means that whenever it completes successfully, it will start again. I like to do false so I can explicitly tell it when I want it to restart again. What you want to do depends on you. Then what we're going to do is, again, set an event on this. So whenever the timer elapses, we're going to call our code. We're going to call this one on stream retry timer. And then once we've got all that working, we're going to say stream retry timer.enabled equals true. So I'm actually going to move that, and I'm going to put that in our onloaded section. So once the window is loaded, start the timer. And then all we need to do is go to our timer event that was just created. Put this with our other event handlers. And in here, again, I'm going to give it a nicer comment. And then the first thing we said is we need to make sure that we, in our timer, own all of the is it failed, is it successful states. There's a keyword for that, which is lock, and then we're going to give it the name of the key that we created, which is the stream reinitialization locker. And that means for any of this code to run, it has to get that key first. And then behind the scenes, it makes sure that only one thing has that key. And then what we're going to do copy paste on this one. So in here, we count from 1 to 4, and we go, if the stream hasn't failed for this one, then carry on, it's okay. So at this point, the bit I've highlighted now means the stream has failed. So if the stream has failed, we toggle it back saying it hasn't failed, we set its status message to be retrying, and then we just stop and start it again, which will trigger VLC to restart playing. And once we've done that for all 4 of them, we re-enable the timer. So now every 15 seconds, anything that's failed will be reattempted. Finally, at the moment, we haven't actually said it's failed. So what we now need to do is have it so that whenever we get a failure, it stores it somewhere. So if it stops, that's a failure. So copy paste. Again, so if it stops, then get a hold of the magic key so that we've got synchronization between them, and then mark this particular VLC control as having failed. And the other place we're going to put that is in our error state. And then that should be it. We should be done. Press play. I'll press start. Let's watch it running. You'll notice there's drop frames here. That's partially due to the network, partially due to shoddy cameras. We've now got error loading stream, opening, tries again, they're going to fail again, and that's going to keep happening all the time. Bang! And that is it. We have made a CCTV monitoring application. That's the coding done. And that's it for this mini-series as well. This has been the first set of coding videos I've done. Hopefully these have been semi-interesting for someone, but I have no idea. All I know is it took me a ridiculous amount of time to edit, so if nobody enjoyed this, I'm not going to bother doing any more coding videos in the future. Massive kudos to people who do, though. Now, how long do these take to edit? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please press like or leave comments below. If you didn't, also let me know what I can do to improve it, because I'd quite like to do some more of these in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this. If anybody's interested in the code, leave some comments below and I'll get it uploaded somewhere. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.